What is up, people, and welcome to Developer Habits, a YouTube channel for software engineers interested in growth mindset, developer lifestyle, and technical tutorials. My name is Ketmar, I'm a full stack engineer from Estonia, and in today's video, I am interviewing Ijemma, a fellow YouTuber and developer who's been interning in eBay and now works as a professional developer in Squarespace. We talk about things like mentoring, getting started as a developer, and what it means to be actually a professional developer. We give tips to how to handle imposter syndrome, what it feels like to teach others, and so on. So without any further ado, let's get started.
I'm not even sure where I saw you for the first time, but you've been popping up in my YouTube, and I've seen your videos. They're really cool. Especially, I'm into JavaScript, and you do tons of videos about JavaScript. I think they're really educating. So, once again, it's really awesome that I get to talk to you now.
Yeah, of course. I'm like excited to talk to people about making videos, JavaScript, all that kind of stuff. It's been like a weird obsessive hobby for me as of like the past year. Yeah.
Yeah. Uh, the main topic that I actually like to talk about is like the growth mindset in developers and like how to learn new topics and so on. Because as you are also a YouTuber, besides being a developer, it's definitely, I assume, a topic that you are into, like teaching others and also educating yourself. But before we get into that, maybe you can just talk about your background, like how you got into development in the first place.
Yeah. So I'm originally from the Bay Area and I didn't necessarily grow up in like direct contacts with like Silicon Valley since that's like the South Bay and more in San Francisco. And I would go to maybe San Francisco every month or so, but it wasn't like I was directly influenced by it. But I was definitely infatuated by the idea of like, oh my gosh, I can work at Google and I can take naps and I can just have like all this free time and just like get paid a lot of money. It was just a very high level, low understanding of like what kind of goes into working at Google, especially as a software engineer. But I knew that I wanted to like work with computers ever since I was a young kid. Tech was always something that I was like obsessed with. So by the time I became like a senior in high school, I was taking this AP class, AP Computer Science, which was the class that exposed me to actually programming in Java. And then I didn't fail the class. I actually really enjoyed it. It wasn't like a total like struggle fest. So I decided to go to college for computer science, which was a lot more difficult than I thought it was going to be compared to like how high school went. But it was a good opportunity for me to figure out exactly what I want to get from a computer science degree since you can explore so many different options with that kind of knowledge. So by the end of my 4 years, I knew I wanted to go down a more specific route of like software engineering and more specifically of like web development using JavaScript. And then I found my current job, which like this job that I have right now is my first job out of college. And it's been just a year that I've been working there full time. And I think through that process of like figuring out what I wanted to do in college and more specifically wanting to do web development and working as like a full-time software engineer specifically focusing in the web during that time from college and now I realized that there was I've always been drawn of like helping people learn software development and teaching them the information that can be very confusing and all over the place because I remember when I was like trying to make websites back when I was in middle school I'd be watching like OG YouTubers. I remember like the new Boston was like my
Yeah,
go-to
New
guy.
Boston.
Yeah, the new Boston was the go-to guy. And I just would like obsessively watch his videos to like make some of like the worst looking websites, but I had so much fun. But it was just like so difficult to figure out what the next step was. So by the time I became like a junior in college, I started taking up more mentorship roles to help first year and second year students, specifically women, to get a good understanding of like just get a good introduction to software development, whether that's like mobile or web or whatever it may be, and then on top of that, give them more technical guidance on actually how to implement some of these products because it can be very daunting, can be very scary since you never work with Git, you never work with JavaScript, you never work with all this kind of stuff, all these separate tools that come together to make a product. And then when I graduated from college after mentoring for like 2 years, I kind of missed it, but I wasn't in the position to mentor someone since I'm a new grad and I'm working professionally now. I just
Hmm.
started at my job. So I started my channel, I think maybe a couple months into my job. there's like some old 4 videos that I made where I didn't show my face. And they were so low quality, but I remember like that kind of like reminded me of why I loved teaching so much. It was like the process of like organizing notes, making sure that all my facts were in line, and then I can like make a quick video to help someone out. And then when quarantine started, I had a lot more free time on my hands, and I started just like churning out more videos. And it's been like a nice escape opportunity for me to like know that even though maybe only 10 people might watch my videos, I don't care about the view count as long as like there's one person who says like, oh my gosh, this like helps me so much. That's all I could ask for making these videos. So it's been like a nice opportunity for me to learn more for myself and also help teach people remotely, since we all have to be socially distanced on top of that too, but just reach people that I don't think I would have ever been able to reach before, like mentoring in person or at my job.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
There are very many topics that you pointed out, and I'd like to go more in depth into. But
Yeah.
I go back to the college time at first. You said that you were mentoring others in the college while also learning yourself, right? And like being back in the college, how did you cope with that? Learning new knowledge yourself, but also teaching some kind of knowledge to others. Like, did you see that teaching is one way of learning yourself, or how did it go? Especially because
No, yeah.
computer science isn't that easy. I mean, you really have to put in the hours to understand the stuff yourself.
Yeah. No, I think you touched on a couple solid points. Like, in retrospect, it definitely, like, mentorship was the opportunity for me to teach myself on top of helping others. But in the moment, I think it was just like the perfect combination of me being a rising junior and feeling a little bit more comfortable with the skills that I've obtained specifically for like mobile or web development with React and React Native. And on top of that, a lot of my classes weren't as rigorous in the sense of they were still difficult classes up until like the last second I graduated, but it wasn't as like confusing and like hard to navigate as it was for my first and second years in college. So during junior year, it felt kind of like the dust was settling in terms of like me navigating college and knowing what I want to be doing and what I want to get from my department, my CS department. So when I became a junior, more specifically, I had an on-campus job, which is like this experiential learning lab that focuses on giving students the opportunity to get hands-on experience, either as a developer, a designer, or as a PM, to work on like real projects. Like we would have applications come into the lab from people who want to get like a project implemented, and then we would have like a committee to select those projects, and then we'd have students come into the experiential learning lab to implement those projects. And it was
And
a
these are
10-week
like
program.
these are
Mhm.
like
Go
real
ahead.
project by real
Like
clients.
real projects. Yeah,
Okay.
we would have some partners that would come into the lab would be maybe like grad students from different colleges, maybe it would be small business in town, even sometimes students from my campus. They would apply, and then you would be able to have students work on your project for 10 weeks. And then if it was a great project and wanted to continue it, we would do it for another 10 weeks. And our
Mm-hmm.
terms were 10 weeks long, so it was like a term by term basis. Um, and I started that job back when I was a freshman, and
Mm-hmm.
I was going like I was so lost when I first started. I didn't know how to even like implement anything. I remember I was using Swift and I hated it. And then when I moved over to JavaScript, I was like, okay, this is actually what I kind of want to do. And then by the time I was a junior, I felt like I was plateauing in terms of knowledge. I remember asking people like, what can I be doing to learn more about React, for example? I feel like I'm just been doing the same stuff. And I remember one of the directors of the lab reached out to me and asked to see if I wanted to be a mentor for the program that I was a part of as a first year, where you get the opportunity to work in the lab as kind of like an intern.
Mm-hmm.
And back when I had that project, or when I participated in that program, I didn't have a mentor. It was just me, 2 other women, and we were expected to like build a full like mobile app in 20 weeks, and we were like, we literally don't know how to do any of this stuff. Somehow we figured it out, but I hated that experience in terms of like the low amount of like day to day
Mm-hmm.
guidance we got. So when it came to junior year, and when the director reached out to me to be a mentor for that program, I was like, of course, like I learned so much now, and I don't want any other first year woman to like feel as lost as I did, because there was some sleepless nights that I underwent to get the project done. So that was the program that allowed me to work with first year women. It was a very specific situation that I was in because it wasn't skilled developers, it wasn't people who had experience. It was people who never knew how to use like a terminal, never knew about how to like program in any language, but they were just fascinated by the idea of creating apps.
Mm-hmm.
So my job was very interesting in terms of like trying to keep that general interest as long as possible during the difficult process of designing and developing and iterating. Just because a lot of people can feel like, oh, maybe this isn't for me, it might be too much work, and then they lose interest. I had to figure out a way how to make sure that they felt like they were still interested in any part of the process, whether they liked the development process or the designing process. So that was like my junior, and I also did it for my senior year. And I think that's where I met so many great people, and I realized like I actually really love teaching people stuff that I know, especially when people are just like generally humble, like just very excited about building things and wanting to do that all day. But
Yeah. Uh, as you were building real projects, do you believe that was also like an important factor in this during that experience?
100%, yeah. I think like even if it was a fake project, maybe there would have been some like a lesser degree of like excitement or ownership. But 100%, like when you say like, oh, this is gonna go out to the world, you can download it now on your phones. Like that's the adrenaline rush that keeps me going, and that was like the adrenaline rush that I saw so many people at like my job and the mentorship program that was like super exciting to see people just like get excited about and use as a reason to continue.
That's a really, really great but it's like an experience that you just told, because my days back in the college, they were like, we also had some kind of subject where we had to build an actual project, but it was like a fake project. It didn't go out anywhere. And I've been freelancing, and I've been so much more motivated when I'm freelancing, because this is something real, and I can't just say, oh, I can't be bothered to develop today. I have to do that. And also you have to find a way to do the stuff.
Yeah. That's like the downside of like academic curriculums. Like you're only there to learn about the technical concepts and not so much of like the benefits of it all. It's a very like siloed experience sometimes.
Yeah, I agree. But regarding teaching others, you're putting yourself out there in front of others. Did you ever feel like people are going to ask me questions that I don't know answers to, or did you feel like it's somehow insecure because of that?
Oh, 100%. I remember, and I'm still like battling with some sort of like level of imposter syndrome, both at my job and making videos and anything that's like public facing. And I think every single video, I think of like a dozen different questions that people could ask me to like counter argue the points that I make in my videos, especially the more opinionated ones. But I think by the end of the day, you have to welcome the feedback and the constructive criticism and any of like the, I guess like the comments that are challenging your opinions, just because I think the ability to defend your opinions as a software engineer is something that's super important to me, just because I feel like I've always submitted to, the best practice or like the most popular opinion without questioning it. And this YouTube channel served as an opportunity for me to really force myself to not only like form my own opinions, but conduct proper research and then defend those opinions. As scary as some people can be and as aggressive as people can be, I think that by the end of the day, the amount of time and energy I put into writing these scripts for my videos, like even if I do make a mistake, I couldn't even be hurt by it because of all the energy that I put into knowing that for the most part, I'm pretty solid on the concept after doing a week's worth of reading. So I think after a couple months of making these videos, it's definitely become less scary and daunting putting out these videos. But every once in a while, I'm like, oh my gosh, I hope I don't get destroyed by like the public by this video. But then it's always positive reactions, and even if I do make a mistake, people are so nice to like point it out and say like, oh, you should do this next time. So it's really nice.
Yeah, I agree. And I also dare to say that as a developer, there's like so much information out there, and it's completely okay to sometimes make mistakes or get some fact incorrectly. And fortunately, the community is most of the times kind of quite friendly.
Most of the time.
Most of the time.
Yeah. But it's good. Like, and like my comment sections have been predominantly very positive, and then people on Twitter have been fairly positive for the most part when you're engaging more technical conversations. So, and I think I do witness opportunities. Like, I see people being nasty online, but I never engage just because they don't deserve our time. I feel like if you engage, good on you to try to better that person. But for me, I cannot engage in people who want to make the community more nasty.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like we can kind of naturally move to the topic of being a good developer, or let's put it that other way, being a developer. What does it mean, and what's the responsibilities that come with that? As I understand, currently you are working in Squarespace.
Yeah.
Yeah, as a software engineer, and I must say I've seen Squarespace ads everywhere, so it's a really cool.
Everywhere.
Yeah.
I get it on all my YouTube videos.
Yeah. So great marketing.
It's a little. They're up there. They're up there. Aggressive advertisement.
And you've been there for 1 year, right? Or
1 year.
yeah.
Yeah, I've just hit my 1 year mark.
So you already know what it feels to work as a professional developer. Maybe we can talk about that part a bit more. Like, what has that 1 year been like to you, and what are the main differences when you were, mentoring others or doing internships versus being an actual professional?
Yeah, I think in terms of being an intern, I had an internship at eBay for 2 summers in San Jose, and I learned a lot about what I wanted from my full-time profession from those 2 summers, and what I didn't want from my full-time profession. And I realized that the first thing that I noticed when I started as full-time was that everything seems a little bit more important. When you're working as an intern for 3 months, you can just feel like the work that you did didn't matter as much, especially if like your team decides like, oh, that intern project we probably shouldn't put into production. I see that happen a lot with a lot of interns where they work on 3 months worth of work, and they're told that it's going to go into production, and then a couple months down the line it gets nixed. And that's pretty common, but I think there's still a lot of benefits of working on a professional 3-month project with professionals around you. And what I learned from my internship beyond the 3-month mark was that I really valued like smaller teams and more impactful products. And I was looking for something like that when I left eBay from my second internship. And I wanted to look for something that was just a little bit more personal to me in terms of like the product that I was creating and the size of the team that I was working on and working with. And I think the great thing about eBay was that like my team was specifically focused on supporting individual sellers. I'm trying to think, C2C? I think it's like consumer to consumer. Like small individual sellers are able to connect with other individual buyers. My team specialized on that instead of like the enterprise aspect where like big corporations like let's say Nike selling to individuals. We were more on like the smaller individual seller side. And I really like the idea of like supporting individual sellers to be able to galvanize and increase their own business online. So when I was looking for other job opportunities, the idea of like supporting small businesses and allowing people to build like a personal brand online was something at the forefront. And Squarespace was just on the money in terms of that. That's like their whole single brand. Like the majority of what Squarespace is known for is just like small businesses and personal landing pages. And that was a great like connection that I felt with the company when I was looking for opportunities. And then, so when I started back last year, there was just a lot that you get exposed to as an intern in terms of knowing the general like build pipeline, or maybe you have sprint reviews, or you have like retros, like very standard software engineering ceremonies that translate across the entire industry. But there's very like more like office specific things that Squarespace did in terms of like the org structure that was very different than what I was expecting, to the way that sprints are defined in size, to just like the general philosophy of getting work done. It was a lot more focus on the quality of code instead of really strictly meeting deadlines. And having that feeling of, oh, I have a lot more time or freedom, leeway to like create a good, solid like PR, for example, and I have a lot of resources at my disposal, makes the development process a lot less stressful and nicer, especially as like a first year new grad working on the job.
Uh,
In terms of mentor, so yeah.
by resources, you mean what exactly?
Oh yeah, sorry. The engineers in the department, the culture, the engineering culture at Squarespace is very nice. I felt like when I was entering the tech industry, I was just gonna be met with a lot of like very self-righteous, like snobby people, but that's like literally the opposite of what I would be getting at my job right now. People are super open to help you whenever you reach out for questions, especially now that we're working remote. And then there's a lot of documentation that we provide internally, a lot of learning resources for like career development, more specifically like courses. So there's just a lot of opportunities for me to feel like I'm growing in every different part of being a
Mm-hmm.
software engineer. And then they also have a mentorship program that's set up for both interns and new grads, where you have like a direct point of contact for anything like immediate questions related about, where do I get this, or how can I find that kind of questions. And then past that point, I think past the 6 month point, it's really up to you to be able to find the mentor that you find will fit your needs personally. Because I personally believe that a mentor shouldn't be like a mentor, like this person is going to solve all of your problems, answer all your, like, I don't think there's ever one person who's going to do that. I
Mm-hmm.
think instead, the culture allows for friendships and genuine relationships to form naturally. And through that, I felt extremely comfortable to like reaching out to more senior software engineers or just my peers and ask them questions and feel like I'm getting the knowledge that I need from them and they're getting the knowledge that I need, or they're getting the knowledge from me that they think they need. And it was a lot more natural in terms of mentorship. And I felt like that approach of mentorship made me realize like I don't have to know everything. I don't have to be like a 10x developer to be a mentor. I just need to be an owner of the knowledge that I have and be willing to share it with other people who want to learn. And I think that structure made it very, like, a lot more approachable to be a mentor and the right.
What I'd like to put out there, because I've been now mentoring for I guess 2 years, other like less experienced developers. And in the beginning, I remember having my first mentee. I was like, oh my God, I need to know all the questions. But actually,
Yeah.
what I've learned now is that I really like to mentor people because they ask questions that maybe I don't know the answers to. And it kind of makes me humble because I have to go and search for it. And sometimes the less experienced developers come to me and teach me because they've gone through the latest resources, for example, and they know
Mm-hmm.
the latest technologies and so on. And I really believe that being a mentor and also being mentored is both for both parties a really great way to learn. And
Yeah, and I think there's like an inherent power dynamic that comes from like the more, traditional mentorship approach where you're a source of tons of knowledge and then you're teaching someone who doesn't know that much. But I think like the way that I try to become a mentor with someone is try to be a friend first and really make them as comfortable as possible because I want them to be able to like joke with me, point out my mistakes, ask me a ton of questions, feel 100% comfortable with me when it comes to getting the information that they need. I never want them to feel like they should hold back and just sit on questions that could possibly help them in like the long run significantly. So I always try to keep in mind that power dynamic and always call it out whenever like I notice that maybe they're a little too shy, or if I'm too shy, I try to like point out like why am I shy with this person who is just trying to be casual with me,
mhm.
and address that power dynamic, and that makes mentoring just so much nicer, more genuine.
Yeah, it does. And well, I guess especially in the world of development, like you can have all that technical knowledge, but I dare
Mm-hmm.
to say that what you gain with experience is actually the way you start thinking about programming. So
Mm-hmm.
you may not know all the technical things in a new language, let's say, but the way you think is more important. And especially, it's well, like if you're less experienced, it's important to spend time with more experienced developers just to inherit that kind of thinking, not maybe even the technology and stuff like that.
Yeah, no, 100%. I think that was like the hardest part about starting a YouTube channel was I didn't have like direct access with more beginner software engineers anymore, like I did back in college. So it was a lot. I had to do a lot of research again of like what are like the beginner steps of learning JavaScript or using Git or learning about React, because there's a lot of knowledge that I just feel is so obvious by this point of like using the same tech that isn't obvious to the beginners. So identifying that was pretty difficult. I wish I had like the ability just to call up all these like new software engineers, but as time goes on, those new software engineers become more experienced software engineers. So you have to meet new people. So it's just like one of the challenges of making like YouTube videos specifically now. It's just making sure that you're establishing or addressing all the possible confusions and then moving on and building from that knowledge.
Yeah, and it's one of the reasons why I really like to have that big development community. Like during the recent years, we've had so many great new developers coming to YouTube. Is that they all have their own way of teaching, and you know, some people, when I watch their videos, I don't get the content. I go to the next YouTuber and I'm like, whoa, this is exactly how I need to be taught those subjects.
Yeah.
So there's something for everyone. But like we spoke about the seniorities a bit, and one of my questions is, in your opinion, how does especially a beginner developer tackle growing as a developer? Like how to advance to new levels as a developer? What should one do?
Yeah, I just want to preface this with like I'm no professional, no career. I can't give career advice or anything like that. But I think what I've been doing personally is first identifying like what I know and getting very comfortable with what I know. I think I did this back when I was a junior in college. I realized that I've been using React so much and that I was very comfortable building out web apps, but I was kind of like unsatisfied with like the complexity of those applications. So when I started to realize, okay, I'm kind of unsatisfied. How can I address the situation? Luckily, I had people who were still more senior than me in terms of experience, and through that opportunity, I was able to like work on projects that they were working on, and that exposed me to like a lot more complex and advanced concepts in web development. And I was exposed to more tools and programming languages. That helps me like focus more on the things that I wanted to focus on. So the first thing that I would say is just if you have the connections and you have the network to work on more complex applications with other people specifically, I definitely suggest that you just jump in like headfirst into that. And I feel like a lot of times that's probably the easiest solution. Like when I started as a full-time software engineer, again, I was just plopped into a whole new project, didn't know what they were doing, and they've been building this like app for like the past couple of years. So there was tons of code that I could like go back and read on, and they were following some of the best standards that I didn't know about. So I would have to go through and say, oh, okay, I didn't know that you can organize your file like this, and like do some cross listing or cross reading on that. So that's like if you have access to more advanced applications at hand. But you can also think about the case where, like, let's say you are owning a pretty advanced application, like you feel like, okay, I've learned as much as I could be learning. Like, where else can I go? And I think I was in that position after a couple months on the job where I started to feel very comfortable with the code base that I was working in, and I felt like I was slowly like plateauing, or I wasn't learning as much as I was first learning when I started. So that's when I took to the internet and I joined Twitter, specifically like for tech Twitter, so I could get a good pulse of like what's happening within the community. And I remember like my teammates, they would mention like, oh, this would happen on Twitter, tech Twitter, or like this person who's very prominent in the community said this, and I was like, I don't know who these people are. So that was like what really galvanized me to like join the community. And then just like directly after making the account, I started realizing like there's so many conversations happening about so many different pieces of tech, software, languages, all that kind of stuff. And these conversations are highly documented, super detailed, and very opinionated. And I realized like, oh, this is where people are talking about stuff, and this is where people are forming their opinions. And it kind of got me excited to like, okay, like if people are writing so many articles or making so many videos about these things, there has to be so much content out there that I could like sit down and just read about one topic and then become a little bit more experienced and knowledgeable on that topic. So I think it was just the joining a community specifically, just like as a summary, like joining a community that is very active in terms of active in a topic that you're kind of interested in. Maybe you want to like start learning how to program with JavaScript, for example. Joining a community that's very active and seeing what people are producing every single day is a good way to start understanding like what's important in the community and what people are talking about. Tech communities move quickly. You can easily like miss something that happened like 2 months ago because there's like something even cooler and better coming out. So joining community in that sense was pretty nice. And then just having a general interest. You don't have to force yourself to read about like the latest ES like features. It's probably some of the driest stuff to have to read through, but you don't have to force yourself to read stuff that you don't find interesting. If it doesn't support your general track of growth, I don't recommend forcing yourself sitting down saying I have to read all these like new implementation features because it will make me a better developer. Like no, like
I
if you're
have
building
to.
like a new
I just have to stop you for a moment. This
oh
is
sorry.
one of the reasons why I started doing this channel and talking to other developers, because
Yeah,
I personally felt at some point so overwhelmed with all the information there is, and I was like, oh, if I want to be a
yeah,
great developer, I have to know everything. That's not the case. You
that's
just
not the
have to
case.
learn the fundamentals, and from
Hmm.
there you can build whatever you want to.
Yeah, and I think there's like a huge amount of guilt that's placed on developers that like I think I don't know where it's coming from. Some of the most toxic people on the internet and like in these tech companies saying like, "Oh, you don't know about this tech? Like it just came out. Like how can you?" And then like you're especially like attacking more like beginner level developers who are just trying to figure out how to like make a while loop, you know? And I think it starts back in college. I remember when I was like a first year, I was like terrified of talking to some of the TAs because they would always have like snarky comments on my code and like my implementations. But like the TAs are there to help you. The TAs are there to like make sure that you're understanding the material, you're learning the fundamentals, and you feel confident about your work.
Hmm.
So the fact that it started back when like I was 18 and I was already getting like snarky, snobby comments about code from people now that I look back on who didn't really know how to program either, it's a very vicious and toxic environment that doesn't really like allow people to form their own track of learning. So
Hmm.
when you have people graduating from college, you have people who think I have to know everything and I have to know everything well. Where you don't have to know everything. There are people who think that who reach out to me and say like, "Oh my gosh, you must know everything about JavaScript." I'm like, "No, I only know about this one thing because like I read about it for like a week. I'm going to be doing this for like weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks. But even if I do it for like 5 years, I'm not going to know everything there is to the language or to like the community that's supported by the language." So I think it's a very like pigeonhole approach that you have to have in terms of what you want to learn specifically. You don't have to know everything.
Yeah, I mean, I even now I've been doing programming JavaScript for, I don't know, 7, 8 years. I still go and Google those array methods like pop and slice and what are the
Yeah.
main differences. You don't have to know it from your head. It's just you have to be good at finding out the the, the best solution for your problems. That's it.
Mhm. Yeah, 100%.
Uh, we are going to run out of our time soon, so I'm just gonna pick one question that I really like to ask from developers. Like, if you would
Yeah.
have to name one habit that you believe makes you a better developer or helps you to become a better person, then what would it be and why?
Ask. I think the general advice is ask questions, but that's very vague a lot of times. I think there are different types of questions that you can ask. I think first of all, knowing when to ask for help is 100% like a huge skill to have as a developer. I think I still struggle with the time that I have to spend on a ticket to be like, okay, I have to reach out for help. But I
Hmm.
think like a couple hours of getting used to a code base, trying to figure out the bug, for example, if you're trying to fix a bug, and you've tried all your options, and that was a couple hours, stop there, ask for help, and then you'll be unblocked with that. I think another type of question that you can ask is like leading questions or more proactive questions of like, what can I do to be X, Y, and Z? You know, I think so many people in tech don't have that guidance. And once they become a senior software engineer, they have so much information that they're just kind of sitting on, and they're not going to like actively give it to you unless you ask for it. So if there's something that you want, like how do I get promoted, or how do I work on more like large scale projects, or how do I organize my time? Like literally any question, there is a developer who's like answered that question and who can help you. And I think like being like very genuine about that approach of trying to like make yourself a better programmer so you're a better developer for other people around you. I think that's the approach that you want to have instead of trying to be like the next 10x developer that people will fear and respect so much. I think asking those kinds of questions, as many questions as possible. More questions are better than like no questions, in my opinion. And it's a lot easier said than done because I still find myself like not asking as many questions as I would want, but I think that just makes it so much nicer for everyone. You're more communicative. Everyone knows where you are in terms of like your skill set and your like your desire to learn, and you're getting the more information that you needed. You need it. So, I think asking tons of questions, any type of question you can think about, like even like how was your weekend? Like what'd you do? Kind of stuff like that. Ask so many questions. So
couldn't agree more. Like I feel I myself also have to force myself to, ask questions, even when you assume something. Don't assume, just go and ask.
You can't assume. You really can't. That's the thing. Yeah, you really cannot assume anything. What might be obvious to you is like the first time for someone else, and vice versa. So yeah, the assuming part's huge. I would assume so much, and no worries. I was just agreeing with your assumption comment.
But regarding asking questions, I just want to say it out loud that I think it's one of the most important actions you can take. It requires practice, and it requires going out. Sometimes it requires going out of your comfort zone, but it's also the thing that will teach you the most. And like, I personally, when someone comes to me and asks me a question that I know the answer to, I love talking about those things, and I love, expressing my knowledge. So it's for both parties, it's a good way. It's a good thing.
Yeah, 100%. Couldn't agree more.
But in that case, let's wrap it up. Like I've said it many times, but still, I want to thank you for taking the time to discuss some of those topics. I really believe that, especially for beginner developers, it's a knowledge that is really valuable. Listening to other developers and listening to their actual experiences. I mean, programming is hard, but I believe it's also tons of fun, and you can actually create something really cool yourself.
Yeah, I think the more people you get involved in the process, the more fun it can become. It doesn't have to be like a siloed kind of project where you have to build everything out. And I'm realizing that with even like projects of getting designers on board and more like branding focused people, the more different types of people who don't even have to be engineers, the more interesting engineering can become.
Yeah. I guess with that said, we can thank the listeners, and once more, thank you, Gemma.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I had so much fun. If you ever do like a part 2, I would be happy to jump on another call and talk.
I'm coming for you. Okay, have an awesome day.
Awesome. Thank you.
Bye.
See ya.